Hundreds of failed stores, CEO scandals, bankruptcies, and almost no growth over the past decade. This is the sad reality of Abercrombie & Fitch, which was once one of the biggest and most recognizable names in fashion, only to crash and burn from its former iconic status. To truly understand why Abercrombie & Fitch has lost the influence it previously had, we have to begin by asking the following questions. Why was Abercrombie & Fitch so unique and successful in the first place? Where exactly did everything go wrong? And where is the brand today? Despite eventually becoming known as a leader in preppy clothes, Abercrombie & Fitch actually started out as an outdoor brand on June 4, 1982 in Manhattan, New York, and the original operation looked a lot different from how it's currently viewed today. In the beginning, the company focused primarily on high-end sporting and camping goods, such as expensive fishing rods, boats, tents, and shotguns, even supplying the gear for Theodore Roosevelt's safaris, Admiral Richard Byrd's expedition to Antarctica, and several of Ernest Hemingway's famous trips around the world. While the brand experienced great success early on, by the mid-1970s, they struggled to compete with lower-priced competitors, and ultimately filed for bankruptcy soon after. However, after being bought out and relaunched, Abercrombie & Fitch managed to rebound slightly before a new CEO would change the brand completely in the early 90s. Recognizing that a major shift needed to be made, CEO Mike Jeffries created an entirely new image for Abercrombie after he took over, refocusing on a much younger college demographic and positioning the brand as casual luxury, similar to Polo, Lacoste, Nautica, Tommy Hilfiger, or Calvin Klein. Although Mike Jeffries was widely seen as a private person and not much is known about his personal life, what is well known is that he was deeply obsessed with youth, and the changes he made at the company strongly reflected this. As Jeffries implemented his vision for the brand, every aspect of Abercrombie & Fitch underwent a radical transformation. The company's clothing line shifted towards preppy, collegiate-inspired styles, often featuring big bold lettering and logos, and their marketing campaigns became increasingly provocative, with the models, ironically, barely wearing any clothes at all, sparking both admiration and backlash from shoppers. While teens and young adults absolutely loved it, parents and older generations absolutely hated it. And as controversial as it was, the marketing campaigns weren't far off compared to their physical locations. During the transition, the stores themselves were also revamped with a focus on creating a unique shopping experience that did an excellent job at piquing the interest of young adults, but also brought along a list of critiques from consumers who refused to buy into the marketing. For example, the lights were so dim you could hardly see the clothes. Store workers were directed to spray down all of the display items with cologne every few minutes. The entire front-facing staff was made up exclusively of young, attractive, barely dressed employees, or as Abercrombie called them, models. There were no displays in the windows, but the loud booming music, dim lighting, and shirtless guys out front all created a curiosity that made shoppers want to look inside. It was unlike any other store people had seen. This complete 180 in branding seemed like a bold move that didn't make sense to a lot of critics at the time, but it was all a part of Mike Jeffries' plan, and that plan was working. He had a clear vision of what the brand was going to look like and how the company was going to operate. And as the 2000s went on, Abercrombie & Fitch was about to grow far bigger than ever before. Abercrombie's sales model was much different from current-day companies. These days, many companies lock people in with subscriptions that are incredibly difficult to cancel. I even found out recently that Netflix was still charging me, despite me canceling my membership months ago. When I signed up with today's sponsor, Rocket Money though, they got it canceled within a few days, saving me the hassle of doing it myself. And this isn't the only thing they help with. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that allows you to manage subscriptions, lower bills, build a custom budget, and grow your savings all in one place. For example, if you take a photo of your phone or internet bill, they'll negotiate a lower rate on your behalf. They'll also analyze your monthly spending to create a custom budget for you and will even help you set aside money for savings. If you're like me, you probably avoid these things because, let's face it, canceling memberships, negotiating bills, and creating budgets aren't exactly the most fun things to do. But they're all things you know you probably should do, and Rocket Money makes it easy by handling it for you. To take control of your finances today, go to rocketmoney.com/dusted to get started for free. Thanks to the sharp pivot in the branding behind Abercrombie, their sales saw a massive boom in the early to mid-2000s, leading them to eventually launch a spin-off brand called Hollister. which was directed more towards teenagers. Between the growth of the two brands, Abercrombie had gone from 49 locations in 1994 with just over $160 million in sales to over 1,000 locations by 2007 with close to $4 billion in sales. The two brands dominated malls, not only in the US, but also in countries worldwide. And during the 90s and early 2000s, this strong presence in malls was crucial for their success. While online shopping has seen a boom over the past decade, going in-store used to be the only option. Not only that, but hanging out at malls was something friend groups did socially. And by rapidly expanding to hundreds of malls across the globe, Abercrombie was able to carve out a huge portion of the market as one of the go-to stores that shoppers had to visit in the mall. By most measures, Abercrombie was a success story, but the methods they used to gain the success would ironically cause the majority of their problems. The entire goal of Abercrombie & Fitch was to make an all-American brand that people associated with the cool kids, but to maintain this image, they had to implement some policies that, in retrospect, weren't the best decisions, such as only selling clothes in very small sizes, choosing to only market to a narrow demographic, and only hiring young attractive white employees to work in their stores. When I was a teenager, going into Hollister/Abercrombie was a trial of passage. Only the skinny and pretty girls had the guts to buy clothes from there. By exclusively selling smaller size clothes, they helped ensure that the company was only associated with skinny people, since anyone who was larger couldn't fit into their clothes even if they wanted to. Now, although that excluded a large portion of their customers, that alone isn't exactly a crime. However, the same can't be said about their policies regarding who they hired, with the CEO directly saying, "That's why we hire good-looking people in our stores, because good-looking people attract other good-looking people, and we want to market to cool, good-looking people. We don't market to anyone other than that. In every school, there are the cool and popular kids, and then there are the not-so-cool kids. Candidly, we go after the cool kids. We go after the attractive, all-American kid with a great attitude and a lot of friends. A lot of people don't belong in our clothes, and they can't belong. Are we exclusionary? Absolutely." Abercrombie made it very clear who their target customer was and who it wasn't. And for over a decade, this exclusionary strategy helped build them up exactly as the CEO Mike Jeffries had hoped. He had successfully created a casual luxury image specifically for attractive college kids, and had grown the company exponentially in a matter of years. However, despite this image of exclusion and exclusivity helping build up the brand to be worth billions of dollars, as time went on, it would also be what caused the brand to come crashing back down. While the exclusivity and provocative advertising of Abercrombie definitely contributed to the massive growth in the first few years, these same practices ultimately led to a string of problems that started to stack up over time. For starters, Mike Jeffries' obsessive vision for Abercrombie led to many fierce business practices that didn't exactly earn them friends in the industry. They were involved with multiple lawsuits where they sued other companies for having similar branding, got sued themselves for the actions of their employees in their stores, or faced legal issues for various other reasons, all of which brought about a wave of negative publicity that certainly didn't help out the company. It also came to light that the entire backstory of Hollister was completely fake. Originally, Abercrombie claimed that Hollister was founded by John Hollister Sr. after he immigrated from New York City to the Dutch East Indies, and established the company bearing his name upon returning to the United States and settling in California in 1922. However, the company was actually founded in Ohio in 2000, meaning they were really just trying to rip off surfing culture without having any real roots in surfing. An Abercrombie spokesperson stated about Hollister, "We're not going after the core surfing market. It's more about the lifestyle and inspiration rather than the actual activity." The two companies also went through largely publicized boycotts over some of their t-shirt designs, and although they claimed the shirts were meant to be lighthearted jokes, it still resulted in a lot of negative press. These issues weren't even the biggest dilemmas they faced though. As the years went on, Abercrombie had mounting backlash for many of their discriminatory practices. This includes a $40 million lawsuit they lost for discriminatory hiring practices, a lawsuit they lost on discriminating against their Muslim employees, and a lawsuit they lost on discriminating against a disabled employee. As bad as these events were, all of the negative publicity problems could have potentially been resolved and forgotten about. But unfortunately, several other bad leadership decisions were happening simultaneously. See, around the early 2010s, the entire culture of shopping and fashion was changing. The popular preppy college look that dominated for so long was starting to fade, and Abercrombie didn't really come up with new styles to replace them. On top of this, the social norm of hanging out and shopping at malls was quickly dying out. When you take a look at the numbers, Abercrombie didn't actually have a large amount of repeat customers at their stores. Many people just visited once to see what the hype was about and didn't return afterward, likely due to the high prices they charge, the weird vibe the locations all shared, or perhaps some combination of the two. Since they didn't have strong customer loyalty, most of Abercrombie's growth relied on new retail spaces opening in untapped areas. But with malls across the country closing down, that business model was no longer sustainable. All of these mounting problems led the company to report massive profit losses, and eventually led to CEO Mike Jeffries getting fired and being replaced in 2014. Since then, the company has surprisingly been able to turn things around by dropping their provocative and exclusionary marketing practices and focusing more on a mix of online and in-person sales. However, while the company still exists today and may do well for some time, it's highly unlikely the branding behind Abercrombie & Fitch will ever return to the status it once had.